We just found out, and it's maybe this isn't the best place to tell you, but we have a surprise announcement that we're pregnant with triplets. She's at home in shock. Did you see Layden singing on my microphone this morning? We did a quick handoff there. Layden, dude, where'd he go? Oh, he's in shame. He's recovering. Everybody's thinking about Pastor Aaron being pregnant with triplets. Genesis chapter 21. The Lord kept his word and did for Sarah exactly what he had promised. She became pregnant and she gave birth to a son for Abraham in his old age. This happened at just the time God said it would. And Abraham named their son Isaac, which means laughter. Abraham, I don't think I'd be laughing at 100. But he named their son Isaac. And Abram was 100 years old when Isaac was born. Touch your neighbor and say, Pastor Aaron's not pregnant. Pastor's just being an idiot. All right, you can have a seat. Pastor Aaron is actually in Ottawa right now. She's preaching at Greatness Church, a church plant that's 1 month old. And so she's having a great time there. And so I am flying solo this weekend, although I live at home with 4 of my daughters, and so there's also that. But my handler's gone, so what are your plans this weekend? Whatever I want. Renee's also out of town this weekend too, so this is great. This is great for me. They're gonna have a mess when they come back to clean up. But we're gonna talk today about sacrifice. I had to sacrifice my wife this weekend. Not like sacrifice. No, I think about that like I should rewrite that. Maybe I had to sacrifice like you had to. But I don't particularly like when God asks me to sacrifice something that brings me laughter. And I wish that he would ask me to sacrifice things that make me sad. But the word Isaac means laughter. And for all those years, God gave Abraham what he promised and then asked for Isaac back. So I was thinking to myself, Pastor Aaron's going to go away for the weekend, then she's going to come back. And she could be really grateful when she comes back. She could return and be like, man, traveling without you is so hard. And you do so much. And so she's either going to come back super grateful, but then I started thinking to myself, or she could come back and be like, I don't really even need you anymore. In fact, traveling with you is a nightmare. And so we have a saying around our house, Pastor Aaron, she doesn't have to live with me. She gets to live with me. One time I was in House of Tools, and I got a little lost in the House of Tools. It's like a tool shop. I thought it should be pretty self-explanatory. It's a tool shop, and I got lost in there for like an hour, and all of a sudden I look up, and I had to drive 45 minutes to get there. All of a sudden I look up, and Aaron's there. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I totally forgot about you. And we were newly married, and have you ever forgotten that you're married? And I'm just like, oh my goodness, you're here. I'm like, I'm married. I forgot about that too, because I was. So she doesn't have to live with me, she gets to. I am here in your life to help you learn how to be patient. Thanks, Sean. Pastor Aaron, she got me back. Anybody in the house married or you've been married, you get it. She got me back. She, one time I walk into the basement. I'm working on a project in the basement, and I walk into the TV room, and she's watching a drama. And she's like, I just really want to share this moment with you. Can you come and sit with me? And you got to understand, maybe you like dramas, but I don't do dramas. I like movies where the bad guys get shot. I don't want character development. I don't want them to get better or smarter. I don't want them to apologize. I just want them to get shot. I just want it to be simple. And so I sit down with her, and it's a funeral scene. And everybody on the screen is crying. Nobody even says anything. They just sit there and cry for 5 minutes. And 5 minutes for me in dog years is 50 years for somebody like you. And I was just sitting there for 5 minutes, and finally I'm like, I got to get back to my project here. Can I watch something different with you later? So she got me back. Marriage is all about revenge. Today's sermon is called Don't Ask for That. Don't ask for that. What do you do when God asks for what he's not allowed to ask for? Because if you are in any relationship that requires connection and you are on this earth to connect with God and people, that's it. That's your purpose. How do I connect with God and people? We say it at Venue Church like this. You connect with God and people by connecting somebody else with God and people. That is how you get to your purpose of connection, is connecting somebody else with God and people. Does that make sense? Connection requires sacrifice. If it's not sacrifice, it's not connection and it's not love, because love requires sacrifice. God asked for Isaac back. Abraham didn't want to give Isaac back. This is not like you when your teenager has a bad day and you're like, God, please ask me to sacrifice my teenager. I will do that right now. I'll sacrifice the kid next door too. Also, if you're new to Venue Church, this is kind of what we do here. I'm a little sarcastic, so there's that. But God, do not ask me to give the remote control to my wife. That's mine. You ever feel the tension rise with the remote control? Does anybody else in their family or your roommates, you got like remote control issues? Remote control issues? Nobody? Y'all, if you're not going to be honest here, I'm going to preach a real hard sermon that you are not going to love. You can feel the tension in the room, like who gets the remote control? You're like, it should be 50-50. I'm like, grow up. Some people are no good if you give them a remote control. They cannot flip channels fast enough. They just like, I can get around like, oh, got to go around the horn. What's that? Like Toy Story? I'm like, here we go. We're looking for channels. We're looking for channels. My wife, she'll sit there on a commercial for like 4 minutes about like a commercial for cholesterol. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. This is actually abuse in some places. But when she reaches for the remote control, okay, what happens when God asks for the thing that he's not allowed to ask for? What we end up doing is we end up not sacrificing the thing that he asked for. We end up doing this little funny thing that we should talk about called parallel sacrifice. You know, somebody here, you've been coming to church for a few weeks or a few months, and God wants you to sacrifice a little bit more and get into the lifeblood of the church, because he really just wants to bless you and connect you. And so a sacrifice to you today that might is like, you know what, you actually just need to join a small group, or you need to join the dream team. One of the reasons that we say you need to join small groups and dream team is because you can't even get to your own purpose in life until you help somebody else get to their purpose in life, which is connection. So like, I'm asking you to give up a sacrifice that will actually be the best for you in the end. It's like an investment into your own future and into your own life. But to somebody, it's like, well, God, well, hold on though. Sunday mornings are my mornings, and I get to decide whatever I want to do with them. And I'm like, well, hold on. So what we do when God asks for something is we do this thing called parallel sacrifice, or maybe alternate sacrifice. Does that make sense? It's like, God, you can have my car, but not my motorcycle. Like that motorcycle, but that's what makes me mad. That's why I have a man card, because I have a motorcycle. Like, and I also need to say, I'm not talking to people. Some of you, when you come in towards the faith and you're exploring faith, we come in as consumers because you're not bringing anything to the table of God. Does that make sense? Like God's like, oh my goodness, thank heavens you're here. I wasn't complete without you. And now he loves you a great deal, but you don't really understand that you really, really need what God's got. So like you come into the restaurant, everything's been paid for. He's like, salvation is free. All of this has been paid for by others. It's like, welcome home. We're just glad you're here. The orphan comes home. It's like, we're just glad you're home. But you have to understand, what I'm talking about today is I'm talking really about people. Maybe that's you. Maybe you need to start sacrificing something, anything. But I'm really talking to people today that are already sacrificing. What happened? Because Abraham was already sacrificing. And I'm like, what happens when God asks for that thing that you're like, hold on. And you start squirming. You start squirming under it. Our tendency is to give something, but not the thing. And that thing is actually keeping you from your connection that God really wants you to have. Now, your relationship with God needs this. Your relationship with your husband needs this, or your son, or your relationship with financial security needs this. I'm preaching next about finances, and I'm like, God, I mean, can you imagine God, your heavenly Father, with all the access to all the wealth, and you're struggling financially, like that's not honoring to the Lord, and God hates that. Like if my daughters are, you know what I'm saying? Like the way that I feel about that, God is trying to protect you and get you under the shadow of his wings. Well, we got to do a couple of things to live and be in the blessing of the Lord. So, it's like asking God to bless you if you don't want to go to work. God's like, well, no, that's part of the... But what we end up doing, particularly in Canada, is we're like, you know what? I want to keep love alive, but I don't want to give what love requires. I don't really want to give what I have to right now, but I still want all the stuff. I still want... Is this kind of working for you? And a parallel sacrifice is a bit dangerous because the people around you, because what a parallel sacrifice does is it actually creates kind of another version of you or another version of God. That we're just like hoping that the real God doesn't keep asking us for the same thing that we already know that he asked us for our own good and benefit, but it's just something that we're struggling with giving up. And so what we do is we end up either making a fake God or making a fake version of ourselves to maybe impress the people around us. You remember Ananias and Sapphira in the early church days? I'm like, this is Peter in a church plant. And everything's like, it's tough. And like, they're under Rome and it's so hard. And there's persecution. And people are starting to like sell properties and give it all to the church. And Ananias and Sapphira, they sell a property and they give a portion to the church, but they said it was all of it. And then God strikes them dead. I'm like, as a church planter, if this would happen to Pastor Dio in Ottawa, that's tough. Like, where's Ananias and Sapphira? God killed them. Why? Because they gave what they didn't give what they said that they gave. There's something in this that what it does is a very dangerous thing because it actually creates a version of yourself. True sacrifice peels back the layers to who you really are. Where you squirm and where it's hard and where it's humiliating. This other version of yourself, see, the people around you can watch you sacrificing, but they don't know that God didn't ask for you to sacrifice this. He asked for you to sacrifice that. So they're very impressed by your sacrifice of like, look at you. But they don't know that you're not really giving the thing that God really wanted. And the thing that's actually keeping you from connecting with God and people the way that he wanted, keeping you from the supernatural work of God in your life. Because true sacrifice exposes the real you, but parallel sacrifice hides the real you. And then after a while, what happens is you start feeling disconnected. If this has ever happened in a relationship or you have had a divorce, you know that this happens of like, I'm not really giving the thing that I need to give. And kind of along the way, they probably stop too. And it starts hiding the real you. And then you start feeling disconnected. And when I feel disconnected, you know who I never blame? I blame Lee. I'm like, man, we're just not as close as we used to be. It's his fault. But I never really blame myself for my part in that. Because, well, Lee, it's probably his fault. So this is what we do. We start, has anybody ever offered a parallel or an alternate apology? Let me tell you what an alternate apology sounds like. Ready? I'm sorry you felt that way. I'm sorry you took it that way. I'm like, it's so close. It's so close. But my dad, Pastor Richard, he considered that a fake apology. Because really what it's not saying is what it needs to say is, I'm an idiot. It's like, I'm sorry you took me being an idiot that way. So really what I'm saying to Pastor Ern is, I'm sorry that you're immature enough to feel hurt by me hurting you. It's like a parallel apology. Look, if you don't want to apologize for real, at least teach your kids to apologize for real so that they can be better than you. Like a real apology is like, I'm sorry for hurting you. That was just selfish. That was just ignorant. I was just angry. I didn't mean it, but I said it to hurt you, and I'm sorry. Like it's just dumb. Or how about this? See, a fake apology robs you of the gift of humiliation. And it's good to feel humiliated when you do something dumb. Like it's good. This is what I've heard, that you might impress somebody with your strength, but you connect in your weakness. So if you're here to connect, guess what? Get used to being weak, because that's your greatest point of connection is vulnerability. But in Canada, we're just like, just put on a happy face. Put on a happy face. I'm on Instagram now. There's so many things I want to say. You're hurting. You're hurting about something, and God's like, reach out to that person who's hurting. You're like, but I'm hurting. Somebody should reach out to me. And God's like, well, I'm trying to heal you.
Come on, reach that.
Sometimes you reap what you sow. Right? Or like, how about in the home? Has anybody taken a shortcut doing house chores? Like, how many times you got to tell your kids? Like, near the dishwasher is not in the dishwasher. He's not going to clean up there. Then I got to do it. Like, call your mom over. Tell her that your time is more important than her time. Like, whose dish is on the counter? And all my kids are like guilty. They're like my dog Daisy when she barks, just like guilt. Whose dish is this? You feel like mom needs to. The thing about sacrifice is that God doesn't change his mind. And it's hard. It's hard initially. Like, you come in and you get saved by the grace of God. You get adopted. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. But it's also kind of hard because this is the first relationship in your life where one party is never wrong. And it's not you. And so, my dad rarely changed his mind because he rarely talked. But by the time he talked, he'd thought about it. And so, he rarely changed his mind about that. But in most marriages, the kids, they aim their story at one parent that might get them what they want. So, I'm that parent. And I'm like, I'm good for a good story. It sounds like you've been practicing. So it's always like, well, Dad, I was thinking, I'm like, I already kind of want to say yes. I'm like, yeah, just don't tell Mom. My mom, I could work a story in there and I could probably talk her into something, My dad was another matter. But my mom was always open to a bit of, you ready? Negotiation. Well, my mom was open to negotiation because her dad, my Irish grandfather, Grandpa Jim, her dad was kind of temperamental. I'm not describing myself. I'm describing somebody else. Temperamental. In a good mood, he was unbeatable. But in a bad mood, when he was angry, like, he'd say some stuff. And he'd do some stuff. And things would get, like, volatile. And so one time when my mom, you remember I said my parents, they moved to Los Angeles when I was a kid? So one time, I think it was in Los Angeles, God asked her to sacrifice something. And then she started a negotiation to which God responded. You ready? Beth, don't try that cute stuff on me. I'm not your dad. And it's weird when you come into the house of God and God's like, can you just do the thing that I want? I know what's best. I've never broken my word one time. God is saying to somebody right now, you have been lied to so many times, and even people with good intentions weren't able to keep all of their good intentions because they're just flesh and human and sinful. God has never broken his word one time in the history of giving word. He has never done anything that's wrong or harmful or sinful. He is love. He's never hated people. He only hates things that keeps people from connection. And we come up against somebody for the first time in our lives that we can't negotiate with. Because negotiation doesn't work with somebody who doesn't need anything.
Right. Yeah.
That's why you negotiate, moms, with your kids, because you need them to like you. My dad didn't care if I liked him. He didn't. He's like, look, dude, I'm not best friends with a 7-year-old. Come on, young parents. I need to coach you a little bit. Stop trying to be your kid's friend. Have you met their friends? You want to be one of them? They're dumb. They don't know anything. You know what my dad was? My dad was my dad. My mom was my mom. We're friends now. My dad didn't want to be my bestie. He didn't care if I liked him. He'd do what's right, though. Well, with God, we have this thing like you can't negotiate with somebody who doesn't need anything you've got.
Yeah.
What are you going to give up that he needs? God doesn't have a bad day when you disobey. You do. But it's not like God is like, oh my goodness, how am I even going to run the universe when Kim didn't do the thing that I wanted? Like, I don't even know what to do now. I'm just overwhelmed. I just can't even. Now, I've failed God on this so many times, But one time I did get it right. But I'll tell you, I was squirming. God told me one time, call up that person and apologize for that conflict that you had. And this is one of those times when I didn't pick up on the cues that me opening in my mouth to, I wrote this down. I think it's better the way I wrote it. It's not like me opening my mouth helps him find out information he didn't know. Right? So I said, but God, you know that I didn't do anything wrong. And you know what God said? It was super kind and loving. It felt like a warm hug. I said, you know I didn't do anything wrong. And God said, okay. I'm like, but God, they're the ones who did this. And God said, and then I had the distinct feeling that he's like, did you want to do it anyways? Because I asked you to. And I did. I called. I cried on the phone. You know how much I hate crying. I cried. I meant it. And we got a miracle the next day that no amount of work could have done, or brilliance or anything else. We got a miracle. It was waiting in the wings. And I'm just like, what is waiting in the wings for you that God is like, you need supernatural right now, and you're playing in the natural. I need you to do something that you think has nothing to do with the problem. I need you to do something over here so that I can unlock a miracle and provision for your life. There is something that God wants to revive in your life, but he can't revive it because it's not dead. You haven't let go of it yet. The only negotiation we find really in Scripture between God and people is this negotiation that Jesus does, which is like, I'll pay for it. Don't punish you. Don't punish Corey. I'll bleed and die. I'll mediate. Have mercy, Lord. The judgment is owed, or you wouldn't be a good God. A good God doesn't allow injustice. You're like, well, why is the world broken? Because God gave it to us, and that was maybe a bad decision. And we gave it to the devil. And then the devil broke it. And then people still get mad at God as if God broke it. No, God sent his only son to die on a cross for your sins, to unbreak the world and to heal it. So, and he works through the church, and this is how he does it. But Abraham actually mediates. For remember Lot in Sodom and Gomorrah, and there's a whole story like, if you didn't check your kids in. I should get into it. I'm not going to. You read it on your own. Sodom and Gomorrah needed to be wiped out because it was crazy. Like it was so bad. It was so bad. And Abram starts negotiating with God, and he's like, what if you found 50 good men in there? Right? And he does negotiate. And you're like, hold on. God does negotiate. Okay. He's like, but Abram's like, mercy, Lord. What if there's 45? And maybe what if there was 40? And he gets all the way down to, 5 or 10? Anyways, it's all wiped out because there wasn't even that many good people there. Maybe there was 0 good people there. But it's this idea of mediation is one thing, but the mediator always pays the price. He's not mediating for anything that he wants.
Right. Yeah.
And when God asks for Isaac, Abraham doesn't negotiate.
Yeah. Right.
What's a parallel or alternate form of forgiveness? Come on, I'm preaching to somebody in the room. You know what an alternate form is? Just kind of getting past it, but not letting it go. Forgiveness is you owe me, but I'm not going to charge you for it anymore. I'm going to trust that the Lord will get it back to me. Or not, but I'm not going to charge you for it anymore. You know what parallel forgiveness does? I used to be so good at this. Is when Layden hurts me, is building a little prison for him in my brain and putting him in there and then taking him out 100 times a day and beating him. You stupid Layden, that's how stupid you are. And then winning arguments against Layden, because Layden in my brain is real dumb. I mean, he's way dumber than he normally is. And the more I talk, the smarter I get, and the dumber Layden gets. And then I get and you deserve this, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to... Here's the funny thing about unforgiveness. It's like drinking poison and hoping that Layden dies. It's not Layden in the box in my head. He's forgotten about it. Your dad who hurt you probably isn't even thinking about it anymore. I'm just telling you. It's you that's in the prison. Forgiveness is like letting yourself out of jail. You just got to let it go and be like, God, I may never get those years back, but I'm going to trust in the name of the Lord anyways, because you are strong and you are mighty, and this is not going to stop you from working in my life. Any great person in the Bible had horrible things happen to them, and God healed them, and God made them okay. Thank you. That is good preaching. Parallel generosity is like this. God wants you like, hey, I want you to sacrifice. Now, we got a new building. We need to build more bunk beds for more children to go to heaven. It's like, I want to get a sacrifice. Sacrifice something that hurts. And we're like, you know what? I'd rather not. I'd rather give this over here. God wants you to reach out to somebody who's difficult. Go love that person. And you're like, I'd rather not. I'd rather like this person. I'm going to reach out to this person. I'm not going to reach out to the person who I don't think deserves it. What's the parallel of worship? You ready? Human dignity. Think about it like this. Worship isn't about you, and it's not for you. It's for God. And he tells us in the scripture what he likes. You know what? Worship, the way that I like it, is like, I can do a head bob like Jay-Z. I look cool. I could be a rapper. King David says he knew the secret. He's like, to his bitter wife, Michal, Saul's daughter, ironically, who said, oh, how undignified was the king of Israel dancing around in the street, whirling before the Lord. And he's like, I will be even more undignified than that because it blesses the Lord. And the very people that I was dancing with are going to honor me because I'm not going to be the king that walks around like a big deal. I'm going to be the person that's just a sheep in the pasture who just loves being saved and loves his father. There's this parallel worship. God's like, I'd like your... He just likes hands. I don't know what it is about God. And we're like... Like, look, if it's your first time hand raising, like, I get it. It's just like... Just carry the box. Just carry the box. Just start. You got to start somewhere. But one day I want you to be like... Oh, God. I don't get why you pick me, but you pick me. Pick me up. I need some help. Sacrifice has no story and no words. It just hurts. One time my dad in Los Angeles, so he went on his own savings, on his own dime. They were eating through their savings. He went to work for a Christian mission for free. And the leader of that turned out to be corrupt. But they were giving him a break on his rent. So he's still paying rent, but it's a break. And then this guy accuses him of not paying the full rent and accuses him of stealing the other rent money. Now, okay, that's one thing when you got food in the fridge. When you don't have food in the fridge, is another thing. And God told him, you ready? Pay him what he said you owe. Now, if your God doesn't say that, you don't have the right God yet. You've created this other thing that's like cool with whatever. When God speaks, well, why would God do that? It's not fair. Fair is you dying in your sins. Is that what you want? I don't want fair. I don't want fair. I just want God. I don't want fair. I want salvation. I want heaven. I don't deserve it. I never will. I don't want fair. I think the hardest thing, my dad's right back there. The hardest thing, he's like, but God, you know that I didn't. I was like, okay. But God, I'm going to look guilty. Okay. Funny thing is, he paid him. God got back double to them. Why? Because God just wanted it. He just wanted that sacrifice. So he had a reward in the wings that they couldn't get without unlocking the door of obedience. And too much we're like, God, give me the stuff before I unlatch that with my obedience. And God's like, unlatch it first. Faith is the substance of things that you don't have yet and the thing that you can't see yet. Genesis chapter 22 says this. Sometime later, God tested Abraham's faith. Abraham, God called. Yes, he replied, here I am. Now, that's easy to say before God asks for it. But you're going to see that he says the same thing in a few verses. I think that's the place you start. Now, you might be far from God right now, and I think that's where you start. Like, God's calling your name. David, God's calling your name. Julie, here I am. Just present yourself to the Lord. Let him decide what to do with you. It's scary. But look, God's only going to bring you in and bring you close. And then God says this, take your son. Abram's like, who are we talking about now? Your only son. God's like, I just want to make sure that we both know who we're talking about. So he said, your son, he created a son, Ishmael, out of the promise of God. He's like, no, not that one. This one, your only son. Yes, Isaac, whom you love. It's the first time love is mentioned in the Bible. This word, love, is mentioned in the Bible about a father sacrificing his son. About a father sacrificing his son. Oh, the sermon's going to preach. I feel like you're not getting it yet. And he says, go to the land of Moriah. And Abram's like, I don't want to go to Moriah. I don't live there. He's like, go to Mount Moriah. Go and sacrifice him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains, which I will show you. This is so problematic for Abram. First of all, God has like promised him Isaac. It's like, you're going to have multitudes of descendants, like the Messiah. In Isaac your seed shall be called. That's what God told him. And Abraham's like, and you're not cool with child sacrifice. That's what all the crazy people around us are doing. And you're like, I would never belong in a society that's sacrificing children. No? We're sacrificing them on the altar of all sorts of things right now. And Abraham's like, you wouldn't ask for that. Watch. The next day, Abram got up early. He saddled his donkey, took 2 servants and his son Isaac with him. Then he chopped wood for a fire for the burnt offering and set out to the place God had told him about. You know, somebody else could have saddled his donkey. He's got lots of servants. Somebody else could have chopped the wood, but he's kind of doing what I'd be doing. I'd be swinging an axe at something. You know what else he didn't do? It doesn't say this in the scripture, but I think that we could 100% conclusively say that he did not tell his wife. And that's our tendency sometimes, is to go to the person that would struggle even more and be like, you don't think I should give this to you? Look, get good godly counsel, but not like that. Not like that. On the 3rd day of their journey, 3 days, Abram looked up and saw the place in the distance. I mean, how many parallel sacrifices did he walk past? He walked past like pens and pens of sheep and goats and cows and people he didn't like. And he's like, I will sacrifice anything here, but not my favorite, not Isaac. Stay here with the donkey, he said. The boy and I will travel a little further. We will worship there, and then we will come right back. It's the first use of this word translated worship in the Bible. Sacrifice. So he placed the wood for the burnt offering on Isaac's shoulder. I'm thinking about my kids. I'm just like, oh my goodness, they can't carry anything. I'm just thinking, you know what? I crack jokes when things get tough. That's my reaction. I'm just like, can you imagine putting that on my daughter, Arwen, or my Katie? Like, maybe. No, and I'm just like, can you imagine on your own child? He carried the fire and the knife, and the 2 of them walked on together. Isaac turned to Abram and said, Father. Yes, my son. Abram replied, we have fire and the wood. Where's the sheep for the burnt offering? God will provide a sheep for the burnt offering, my son. And they both walked on together. When they ascended to the place God had told him to go, Abram built an altar and arranged the wood on it. Then he tied his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Now, there's so many ways I could preach. It's like, you need to tie the sacrifice down. Now, Isaac could have resisted, but such was his relationship with his father look, Abram's got to be 110 or more. You can't keep a squirming kid on that thing.
Right.
He has to submit to it as well. There's this thing, this beautiful relationship, but he ties the sacrifice down. I'm feeling for somebody today like you put the sacrifice on the altar, but you didn't tie it down. So it just keeps escaping. He picked up the knife to kill his son as a sacrifice. At that moment, the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Yes, he replied, here I am. I would have said, don't talk to me right now. Don't lay a hand on the boy, the angel said. Do not hurt him in any way, for now I know that you truly fear God. You have not withheld from me even your son, your only son. God said to Abraham, I know that the giver is more important than the gift, because the giver is the source of the laughter, not the gift. I know you just want your marriage to work out. It's not the source of the laughter. Jesus is. You got to stop putting the weight of the joy of your life and the expectation on people. Put it on the Lord. He's the only one with shoulders big enough to bear it, and he's the only one who's got it to give it. Then he looked up and saw a ram caught by its horns in a thicket. So he took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering in place of his son. Abraham named the place Jehovah Jireh, which means the Lord will provide. Meets your needs. To this day, people still use that name as a proverb. On the mountain of the Lord, it will be provided. Don't ever think that your sacrifice is only about you. Don't ever think that your sacrifice is only about you. The first time love is mentioned, the first time worship is mentioned in these ways is a father sacrificing his son. Why Moriah? He didn't live there. Moriah is the site where Jesus was sacrificed.
3 days of walking with your son to the place that God would sacrifice his one and only son so that you could be adopted into his family.
He laid the wood on Isaac, but the true Son of God carried the wood to the altar. Abraham tied Isaac down. Jesus was nailed to the cross, not escaping his destiny so that you could have one. 3 days, Jesus was in hell before he was resurrected. 3 days. It's not hard to worship at the sacrifice. The sacrifice is the worship. Pick up the touch card that I had on people put on your chair. Find the side that says, it is well. God asked a man to write a song. And this is the song that he wrote. I want to give you the backstory. This was written by Connie Ruth Christensen. The backstory of the man, the author of that song, whose name is Horatio Spafford. He was born in 1828. He was a wealthy Chicago lawyer with a thriving legal practice, a beautiful home, wife, 4 daughters, and a son. He was also a devout Christian and faithful student of the scriptures. At the very height of his financial and professional success, Horatio and his wife Anna suffered the tragic loss of their young son. Shortly thereafter, in 1871, the Great Chicago Fire destroyed almost every real estate investment that he had. In 1873, Spafford scheduled a boat trip to Europe in order to give his wife and daughters a much-needed vacation and time to recover from the tragedy. He also went to join Moody and Sankey on an evangelistic campaign in England. He sent his wife and daughters ahead of him while he remained in Chicago to take care of some unexpected last-minute business. Several days later, he received notice that his family's ship had encountered a collision. All 4 of his daughters drowned. Only his wife had survived. With a heavy heart, he boarded a boat that would take him to his grieving Anna in England. It was on this trip and over the same waters that he penned
When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. I also put the last verse of that on that card so that when you're singing the first verse, you don't forget the last verse. It says, and Lord, haste the day when faith shall be sight and clouds be rolled back as a scroll. The trump shall resound and the Lord shall descend. Even so it is well with my soul. And God asked him, write that song over these waters. Because one day, somebody named Corey is going to sing that song on the worst day of his life. And Ryan's going to sing that song on the worst day of his life. And millions of Christians are going to sing that song on the worst day of their lives because you actually wrote down a template for what sacrifice actually looks like. But don't you ever forget that anything the Lord asks you to give up, when we get to heaven, every tear will be wiped from our eye. Every person that your financial sacrifice or worship or service, every person that makes it to heaven, you're going to be there with them, with the Lord, and he's going to say, like, was it worth it? But don't ever forget that your sacrifice is tied to the destiny and the eternity of so many other people. Father, some of us need clarity in the prayer corner. We think we know what the sacrifice is. We're not sure. Some of us have made great sacrifices, but the Lord is asking for something else. And the Lord is asking to unlock something in our lives and unlock something in this city. Lord God, and we never think when we're being asked of the sacrifice of the eternal reward in somebody's life. It may seem totally unconnected to us, but it works. There's something about it that brings resurrection to people. And I pray for courage in every heart just to give what we need to give today. Somebody here, you just need to sacrifice your will and your life plans, and you just need to come to Jesus, or you need to come back to Jesus and be like, today's my day. I need to stop putting this off. And I want to invite you to sacrifice your will and sacrifice your way and give your sins and your shame to the Lord right now and have the Lord adopt you into his family. Church, pray this after me. Let's help you. If you need to pray this, you need to pray this, and then you need to get a Connect card. You need to get an I've decided card and go back to the prayer corner or to the 7-minute party, and we'll direct you what to do next. But pray this after me. Church, I believe that Jesus is the Son of God. I believe that he died and rose again to save me from my sin. I give you my sin and shame. I give you the rest of my life. Now watch what the Lord had planned all along. Now watch what the Lord is going to resurrect. Now watch the graves turn into gardens.